Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome James Maltese.
Good afternoon, Infocom. I hope everyone's enjoying the show today. I am Jim Maltese. I'm the Vice President of Quality Standards for Level 3 Audiovisual out of Mesa, Arizona, and today we are going to be talking about AV analytics and what we do with all this data. I always like to start with the why. So why is this important? Why do we care? We've got the potential to be collecting a tremendous amount of analytics about how our users are actually using their system, how many people are using it, how they're using it, if they're enjoying themselves. But my question to you, and I'm asking, are we taking advantage of it? Are people actually reviewing this data, or we're just kind of acting like dragons where we hoard it and we keep it in our cave, but we don't really look at it, we don't really do anything with it? That's kind of what I want us to start taking advantage of it, because it can mean incredibly valuable things to our users, our industry, and really AV in general. So we live certainly in a data-driven culture, right? W. Edwards Deming said that without data, you're just another person with an opinion. And I absolutely love that phrase. Like, how do we come up with how many rooms we have to deploy? How do we come up with how many seats should that room have? Is it just a rule of thumb? Do we actually collect this data from our users so that we can deploy data-driven systems and spaces for our users? Or are we just kind of guessing? Like, yeah, I don't know, like 4-seat huddle space and maybe a few medium conference rooms and maybe an Excel conference room, because, I mean, those are fancy and they're fun, but are they what our users actually need? And that is the big question. So what am I talking about? What is all this data analytics stuff? It is the process of inspecting, cleansing, transforming, modeling data with the goal of discovering useful information. And I think a lot of people here at Infocom do an incredible job at the first part, right? We collect it, but are we actually using it? And that's what I just want to take a few minutes of your time and talk about 5, I'm going to call them fun, probably more useful, entry-level examples of data analytics. So let's kick it off with room use efficiency. There are a few different flavors that we're going to attack here, but how much is that room actually used? Right? If you talk to someone in finance, they're going to say, let's maximize that. Let's get it to 100%. I paid good money for that conference room. I want it used every single time, every minute of the day. I want it in use. But is that realistic? I don't think so. We certainly want to allow opportunities for ad hoc meetings, right? If our users have an escalation, if they've got a fire drill, if they just want to meet quickly, we can get a lot of value from that as long as we have an available meeting room. Also, what happens if the meeting room goes down and we need to service it? Do we have space allotted in our meeting room efficiency to allow for that? Or if we lose a room, do we have to go out and rent space so that we don't lose an opportunity to bring people together? These are all very important things. So I'm kind of guessing if we shoot for a target of 50-65% room use efficiency, that'd be a good goal. But are we doing that? Are we measuring that? Does it matter? Or are we just saying, you know, as long as the rooms look busy, I'm happy? I'm saying we should be collecting data. Additionally, are they the appropriate size? Do they have the correct amount of seats? And this is very complicated, right? Should we have 4 huddle rooms and 5 medium rooms and 1 large? Should we have 2 large? Should we have all huddle rooms? How do our users get together? How many people are in a meeting at one time? I don't know. We have to collect that data. So, a case study, and I tried to make a joke, right? It's a literal head scratcher for the dog with the thing. I'm trying, folks. It's Vegas. So we had a company who had wonderful, beautiful amounts of 8 to 10 people conference rooms. And they were used 95% of the time. Insane. It's dangerous, right? But they had several huddle rooms for 4 people. They started measuring how many people were actually in these medium, large conference rooms, and they realized there were only 3 or 4. And so they had to ask themselves, why are only 3 or 4 people using these rooms when we've got 3 to 4 person conference rooms? And what they found is the feature set didn't match. They were wasting money on the larger rooms because they met the user's needs. The appropriately sized rooms did not have that functionality. So for less than $1,000 a room, they added the functionality to the small rooms, and it evened everything out. And when we're talking about cost per square foot, when we're talking about high rents, when we're talking about just maximizing the value to our clients, that's a pretty important metric to keep in mind. Another fun metric, we all know about this, we all probably hate it, we all probably complain about, we have certain serial overbookers who book a room for the entire day and never show up. That's fun, right? Sometimes there might be like an executive level conference or collaboration where they book the room for the entire week and no one ever shows up. They're not being good stewards of the space, right? They're wasting money, they're wasting resources. Additionally, they might be influencing the culture to not trust the scheduling platform, right? Because if you show up and you see an empty room but it's booked, I mean, it's an empty room, but it's booked, but it's an empty room, so I'm kind of going to sneak in there a little bit. That's a little bit dangerous. We don't want that to happen. So what can we do? We keep track of the serial bookers, the serial overbookers. If they do it once, sure, that's fine. But if they do it, if it's a habit, that's when we have to have a conversation. And once they realized it's being logged, once they realized we're keeping track of that data, once they realize we're going to hold them accountable to their booking, all of a sudden the culture starts to shift a little bit. And they start to be better stewards. They start to be a little bit more conscientious. Source usage. How many people in higher education here? Do I put that room PC in the lectern? Does anyone use it? Do I just leave it for a laptop? Do I still need to keep on putting VHS in there? What do I need it? And you might be thinking, oh, who cares, Jim? It's another PC. It's a couple of $100. It's a Blu-ray player, $30. Who cares? But the geometric, right? We've got to worry about HDCP. We've got to worry about switcher size. We've got to worry about control size, control complexity, and then we've got to maintain all this stuff. And if no one uses it, why? Why are we putting it there? So are we actually measuring how often our sources are being used? Another case study for you. A manufacturer came up with a great black box. I'm sure they aren't here, right? They're not at InfoComm, but it was a stellar black box, and they were very excited to deploy it in all their conference rooms. So millions of dollars spent on these black boxes, hundreds of thousands of dollars spent to deploy them and integrate them into the space, only to find out no one wanted to use it, right? So the fix, before they spend millions and millions of dollars, let's make a pilot program. Let's track how many times people actually use it in that pilot program, and then we can make a business decision if this room upgrade is worth it. That's a little bit smarter, right? It's a little bit better use of our resources. Okay, this is my favorite one. How many people track service issues, right? We've got all these ticketing software things. It's fantastic. It makes sense. We can catalog everything. How many people actually go through that information and look for trends? Or are we just being dragons and hoarding that awesome service ticket information? I had the privilege and honor of going through 18 months of AV service tickets for a very large financial institution, and it was eye-opening. No one had ever looked at it before, and I don't know why, because it was incredibly enlightening, right? We see 11% of user error. All right, that means we need a lot better training, and we can clear that 11% up. 20% solved with just cycling power, right? It's all computers, and did you reboot it? That's very interesting. So 30% right there, very, very easy fixes. Cables, come on. We just keep some cables with reception and people know to look there, fine. So now we've fixed, wait for it, 55% of our service tickets can be fixed with a network power distribution unit, better training, and additional cables. The other stuff, yeah, no, we got stuff. We still have to do our jobs. I'm not saying that. But think about all that trend information that we can glean. Think about how that can impact how we design and deploy and support our users if we just actually looked at that data and looked for trends. Okay? A great case study. So the same large financial institution that hired me to look through that 18 months of data, they wanted to make their, what did they call it? The managed service desk, the remote support desk. They wanted it to be more effective. What they found was currently they only had 3% of all cases who called into the remote support desk. The remote support desk was actually able to close that without sending boots on the ground into the room. It could be better. 3%, it's not nothing, but it could certainly be better, especially when we can just cycle power to something and get them through the meeting, especially if we can just direct them to reception to get some spare cables, especially if they can be better trained operators, get to know the systems a little bit better so they can respond a little bit more effectively. So what did we do? We created a curriculum for the MSD operators. How do I read drawings? How do I get to know kind of the intricacies of the systems a little bit better? How do I access this information immediately? So while I'm on the phone, I can answer questions. We organize the documentation. This is crucial. How many people store documentation by project? It's tough. Financially, it makes sense, right? We finish the project, get paid, fantastic. If I'm a user, I'm calling about room 123. If I'm an integrator, I got to think, all right, room 123, we first did that in 2018. It was project 4567. We did an update again in 2020 where it was project 2723. So if I want to get the most recent documentation, I need to remember that was the most recent it gets crazy. It gets crazy. Instead of organizing that documentation by room, by how our users access that information, by how our users consume that information. Right? It's kind of a mind shift, but a critical one. And everyone's favorite, IP-controlled PDUs. If I can just remotely log in and cycle power to something, as long as they're not in the middle, but if I can get them back up and running in seconds, why don't I try it? So $400, all of a sudden it went from being able to address 3% of cases to 29%. A tenfold improvement. I like that. I like that stuff, all because we looked at the data. We looked at the service tickets to look for trends and to see where we can improve the issue. This is another one of my favorite, right? I mean, I don't know if anyone is brave enough to use the user experience collectors in bathrooms. I'm not myself. I don't, it is what it is. But maybe we don't keep it in the bathroom. What if we ask our users, how did the meeting go at the end of a call? Software applications do it, right? We all use Teams, we all use Zoom, we all use WebEx. Every now and again, we get a little quick survey. Hey, how is the call quality? How is the meeting? Fantastic, 5 stars, everyone's happy. Why don't we do that on our AV systems? How important would that be? How valuable would that be if we can start linking user experience with some of our VIP users? How baller would that be if a VIP user, if we find out that they had a poor experience and before they get from the conference room back to their office, we pick up the phone and say, hey, Mr. CEO, I understand you had a poor video quality experience in room 123. We are on it. We've made calls. We have people looking at the network right now. I got you. That's a different experience, right? That's a different level of experience. If we add a silly little 1 or 2 question survey to the end of our GUIs, and what could we use that information for? Not only being proactive in our service response, but also what a tremendous amount of valuable customer satisfaction data that is very easy to glean, that is very easy to get, but very few people are taking advantage of. Right? We try to send out surveys over email and everything like that, and I don't know about you, we get like a 20% response rate, 25%, and I'm very proud of that. But it's 20 or 25%. If we can have it in their face at the end of each call, at the end of each session, I think we would get more interaction with our users. And not only the technology managers, but with the actual users. And I like that. I really like that idea. So, we talked about some fun analytics. We want to take the guessing out of space requirements. We have the opportunity as an industry to collect a vast amount of data. We are collecting a vast amount of data whether we like it or not, right? There's that whole, is it privacy or is it a convenience? And that's something we do have to weigh. But we have access to it, and we should really take advantage of it. We talked about room usage, efficiency, source usage, service issues, user experiences. And the really exciting thing about this, I've heard a lot of integrators complain about or not complain, they're cautious about the future of the AV industry, right? We're seeing the complexities of conference rooms go down. We're seeing the installation costs go down, which is wonderful for users. It's a little nerve-wracking, you know, for us integrators, so that's a thing. But what if we introduce a new service? What if we start managing these services, managing the user experience, and collecting this data? And not only collect it, right? We don't want to be those dragons, but we want to curate it. We want to glean information, and then we want to take that information back to our users and say, hey, instead of just relying on the rules of thumb from the architects, I can tell you exactly how many conference spaces you need for the second floor sales department. I can tell you exactly how large those conference rooms should be because I've got 3 years worth of data on how many people enter every single one of your meeting spaces. That's a very different conversation. That also brings us AV integrators, us AV designers, to a much different table, right? All of a sudden we're being invited to real estate planning meetings. All of a sudden, instead of being brought into the project team at the very last minute where it's like, all right, sorry friend, you got about 2 weeks to install this 8-week project. Now we're being brought to the table very early in the conversation because they're using our data. They're using our data to make very important deployment decisions. And that's what I want to see for the AV industry. So, my call to action for you guys is try it. Pick one. Pick one. You know, we're not talking about crazy rocket science stuff. We're not talking about huge amounts of resources to get these deployed, to start tracking these things. Maybe a little tweak in a control system code, maybe a little form that the system spits out some information to so we can track user experience. Pick one and try it and see what information you get back for your users. And I think you're going to like it. Okay? If anyone would like, we've got a QR code right here where there's a little bit more information. If you want to listen to some podcasts on the subject, if you want to see a few blogs, that's at that QR code. So I encourage you to take a peek at it. If you have any questions, I encourage you to reach out. And do we have any questions? No? Oh, if you have any questions, you could hit me here as well on the Slido. All right. Good to go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. It was great to see you. Have a great show.